Okay, fantastic. I am going to share my screen now. And I'm hoping that, can I get a thumbs up from Cherie maybe? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it and it looks fabulous.
Perfect, okay. So the title of this presentation is the 3 most important things I ever learned about vocal production. And I want to emphasize, these are the 3 most important things that I ever learned about vocal production. You may come across elements of vocal production that have a bigger impact on your development as a singer, but these were the 3 biggest game changers for me. And they're definitely things that I think everybody needs to know. So that's why I'm sharing these particular things today. Now, what do we mean by vocal production? Well, specifically, we're talking about this group of vocal skills on the Sweet Adeline score sheets: posture, breathing, phonation, resonation, and articulation. We're basically talking about how we build and manipulate our instrument to produce beautiful tone. That's what we're talking about when we talk about vocal production. Now, I want to start us off with, in the most complicated way possible in the Zoom world, we're going to start by going into breakout rooms of hopefully 3 people per breakout room. And I'd like you in your breakout room to say hello to whoever you're partnered with and reflect on this question. Are there any elements of vocal production that you always think about when you are preparing to sing your best? And if so, what are they? So if you were in a rehearsal right now and the director raised his hands or raised her hands and said, start at measure 1 of the contest ballad and let me hear your best singing, where does your mind go in terms of vocal production? Do you immediately think about your alignment? Do you immediately think about tongue tension? Or do you immediately think about character? Or do you immediately think, what are the words? What's the first note? Any response is valid. So we're going to talk about that in your breakout rooms for 3 minutes, and then you'll be brought back here. Okay, ready, go.
So Elizabeth, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Cherie.
Hi, Cherie.
Okay, so we didn't change it to 3 minutes, so I'm just going to close the rooms when we're at 27 minutes.
Okay.
It's automatically assigned to 30 minutes.
Okay. Yes, we definitely don't want 30 minutes.
No, I really freak them out.
Okay, it invited me to join a breakout room and I did not click on join. So I'm assuming I don't need to do anything.
That's right.
Okay.
And then anyone that comes on now, like Karen Kelly, she'll just be in the room with us.
Okay, cool. So Karen, right now people are reflecting on elements of vocal production that they automatically think about anytime they're preparing to sing with their best sound.
And I'm supposed to be unmuted?
I mean, if you were in a breakout room, that's what you'd be talking about.
Okay. So what the first thing that I think of is on the first breath. Is what prepares me to successfully launch into the first line of a song.
Uh-huh.
lifted and resonant. And it's actually more in the mind, almost more in the mind than even physical. You know, it's a combination of my physical and my mental engagement at that
Cool.
moment.
Cool. Excellent.
If I start without thinking, then I get about like that. So that's what I get out of it. All right, I'm muting.
I want to say your hair looks amazing, by the way.
It always does.
Jean or Susan, do either of you want to share?
Thank
Since
my hairdresser.
Share what?
Do you want to, do you have any thoughts about where your brain goes when you're preparing to sing, as far as, you know, any aspect of vocal production that you automatically think about when you're preparing to sing your best? And it's okay to say, no, my mind is a blank. Or I'm just trying to watch the director.
You got it. I think it would be different in a quartet than well, it shouldn't be different than the chorus, but in a sense, in the chorus, I'm just using his beginnings to you know, to start us to right before that, I tried to get just kind of like focused. But
So you're focused on coordinating with the downbeat, basically.
Well, whatever he's doing.
Cool.
So I've closed the rooms. They're on their way back.
Perfect.
So to give you quick feedback from Cherie, being predominantly deaf, I focus on making sure that my feet are in a position where I can feel the vibrations on the risers, because that's how I do most of my gauging and singing. Is if there's no vibration, we're flat. And so that's, for me, that's what I do to start any song.
Cool. All right, do we have everybody back?
Nope. They're wandering back.
Wandering back?
Well, they will be back in 3 seconds, whether they want to be or not.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to sharing my, I'll go back to sharing my screen. Okay, I hope you had a good moment of reflection with your breakout partners. I want to talk now just briefly about the most annoying coaching feedback that I ever received. So this is a quartet I used to sing in, Sunbreak Quartet. This was us in 2015. And at that time, our #1 coach was Ted Chamberlain. If you have trouble, if you have faces that are obscuring part of your screen, you can manipulate those faces to move them out of the way. Just letting people know that. But right now on my screen, Ted's face is obscured, and so I need to move other people's faces out of the way. So our coach was Ted Chamberlain. And on Tuesday afternoons, Ted would coach us in the upstairs church parlor at Queen Anne Baptist Church. And then on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m., he would direct the Seattle Seacordsmen downstairs in the basement. Okay, setting the stage for this little story. So it was our last coaching session with Ted before contest in 2015. And here was the plan. The plan was we get coached by Ted in the parlor upstairs, and then we go downstairs to the basement and perform for the Seacordsmen. Okay, so that was our Tuesday night plan at the last session before contest. So our coaching session upstairs in the parlor went great. We'd been coaching with Ted for months and months, and we were working on lots of elements of vocal production, and he said, you guys are just singing great. I think you are very well prepared for this contest. Doing a great job. And then on the way downstairs into the basement to sing for the Seacordsmen, Ted turned to me and he said, do you want me to listen with my critical ears and give you feedback when you're singing for the guys? Or do you want me to just sit back and enjoy the performance as an audience member? And I, of course, said, oh, I definitely want you to listen with your critical ears and give me any feedback. So we performed for the C chordsmen, and we happened to be wearing our costumes, these red dresses. So from the moment we walked into the rehearsal hall, they were whooping and hollering and cheering. And it was just this great adrenaline rush for us. And we performed our contest set, and the guys all stood up and cheered. And it was just incredibly fun and satisfying. And I felt great about it. And afterwards, I went over to Ted expecting to get a pat on the head. And I said, what'd you think? What'd you think? Do you have any feedback for us? And Ted kind of sighed and he said, well, I could tell by the way you took that starting breath that the sound wasn't going to be as good as it was upstairs. Wah, wah. So that was the most annoying coaching feedback I ever received. And we're going to circle back to this at the end of the presentation because this was a big turning point for me in my journey as a singer. Okay, let's talk about the 3 most important things I ever learned about vocal production. Number 1, reduce pressure on the vocal tract by aligning the holes in the ears with the highest part of the shoulders. Number 2, condition and manage the vocal folds to achieve efficient closure for the optimal barbershop sound. And number 3, habitually prepare for the first breath by intentionally building your best instrument. We're going to talk about each of these at some length. Let's start by talking about reducing pressure on the vocal tract by aligning the holes in the ears with the shoulders. Okay, so here's your vocal tract. Your vocal tract is this blue area. It's the chamber in which you resonate air. It is your main resonator, and it extends from the vocal folds at the top of the larynx all the way to the lips. Here's the most important things we need to understand about the vocal tract. Muscle engagement and pressure around the vocal tract affects the shape of the vocal tract. And when the shape of the vocal tract changes, our sound changes, for better or worse. The vocal tract is a very flexible instrument. It's a very flexible resonator. And when we change the shape in any way, it changes the sound. An example of a good change in the shape of the vocal tract might be using the tongue to form word sounds in order to communicate lyrics, right? We can't really sing lyrics without changing the shape of the vocal tract through tongue manipulation and moving the jaw around and so forth. So, so sometimes it's productive to change the shape of the vocal tract. An example of a bad change would be any muscle engagement that constricts the vocal tract for no good reason. Okay. Now, many of you probably recognize this character. This is Kim Vaughn, 3-time international quartet champion. And I once had the joy of coaching in a quartet with Kim Vaughn. And she said, Elizabeth, what do you want to work on? And I said, well, I feel like I'm struggling a little bit with vocal tension. And Kim looked at me and she said, tension is the enemy of every singer, everywhere, all the time. This is something that we should all in Sweet Adelines have tattooed on our forearms because it's incredibly important information. Tension is the enemy of every singer, everywhere, all the time. Okay, why is pressure on the vocal tract such a big deal? First of all, when we put pressure on the vocal tract for no good reason, it reduces the available resonating space. It makes the resonating space smaller. Secondly, it makes individual voices stick out. And in the barbershop world, in general, we do not want to hear the sound of individual voices. We want to hear a unified ensemble sound. So when we put pressure on the vocal tract, our individual voice is more likely to stick out of the ensemble. When we put pressure on the vocal tract, we limit our vocal flexibility. So if the shape of the vocal tract is compromised, we're going to have more of a struggle to hit those high notes. It interferes with pitch accuracy. Vocal tension is, I have been told by various voice coaches, is actually the #1 cause of flatting. Pressure on the vocal tract contributes enormously to flatting in ensembles. And finally, pressure on the vocal tract can cause vocal fatigue and even vocal damage. So we want to protect our voices and keep them healthy by keeping pressure, unnecessary, unproductive pressure off the vocal tract. Okay, now I'm going to send you on a 2-minute scavenger hunt. If the last thing in the world you want to do is get up out of your chair right now, that's okay. You don't have to play. But if you're willing to play, I'd like you to go find an object in your home that weighs approximately 10 or 11 pounds that you can hold with one hand. So for example, a 10-pound dumbbell would be perfect. A 10-pound bowling ball would be perfect. 2 bags of flour would be perfect. 2 bags of flour inside a plastic bag that you can pick up with one hand, etc., and bring it to the computer. Okay, so 2 minutes, go. And I'm starting the timer. And that's 2 minutes. Okay, moving on. The average human head weighs approximately 10 to 11 pounds. Okay, so I'd like you to take that object or bag of objects that you just brought to the computer, and I'd like you to hold that object extended at your side. I'm holding a can of latex paint right here hanging down at my side, and I'd like you to just sort of rock it back and forth a little bit and reflect on the fact that this is how much your head weighs. Now, every time I do this exercise, I am shocked that my head is this heavy. Most of us do not experience our head as being as heavy as a 10-pound bowling ball or a 10-pound can of latex paint. I personally tend to experience my head as weighing a pound or 2. That's what it feels like to me. And probably that's what it feels like to you, because hopefully we've never been without our heads. So we're very accustomed to this heavy weight that we carry around on top of our spine all the time. Okay, our muscles work continuously to keep our head balanced on our spine. The amount of muscle effort needed to balance the head is directly related to alignment. Okay, so now I'd like you to take your bowling ball or your heavy weight, and if you have shoulder issues, you might not want to do this, but I'm going to invite you to lift your object out to the side only as high as is comfortable for you. And I want you to notice that as this angle increases, the amount of work required to hold up that heavy object increases dramatically, right? It's much harder to hold a bowling ball like this than to hold it extended straight down at your body. Okay? Pretty straightforward so far? Now, this is a document that I took from a chiropractor's website. The name of the picture is Texting Your Way to Neck Pain. And you'll notice that the figure is bending his head forward more and more to look at a text. And the farther out of alignment he comes, the more weight the muscles in his neck are experiencing, right? All the way up to 60 pounds. So when we walk around looking at a text with our heads way far forward, it is as though we are carrying the equivalent of a 60-pound head. And all this extra muscle work creates pressure on the vocal tract. Okay? Hope that's clear so far. So this is going to be an assignment for you for tomorrow. If you happen to have another person quarantining with you, ask them to photograph you in profile with their cell phone, and then study the photo, and then adjust your alignment and take a second photo. So you'll notice that the woman in the picture is kind of slouchy in the first picture, and then she's aligned in the second picture with the holes in her ears aligned with the highest part of the shoulder. That's what we're going for when we take a picture in profile. Okay, hope we're following that. Now, here's the problem that you'll discover if you choose to accept this assignment of taking a photo of yourself in profile. The problem is we live in a slouching society, and we spend our days hunched over computers, and we spend our days driving in our cars, and over time, these muscles lengthen, and these muscles in the back shrink. So that when we come into optimal alignment and we bring the holes in the ears over the shoulders, optimal alignment can feel weird. It can feel tense even. Now here's the rule. If it doesn't feel weird when we adjust our alignment, we probably haven't improved anything. We're probably just going to our default posture. And since we live in a slouching society, most of us have a default posture that's a little bit slouchy, that where the holes in our ears are a little bit forward of our shoulders. So we want to go towards the point where it feels a little weird. But what if it feels tense when I align my ear holes with my shoulders? Here's the trick. Use subtle continuous motion to keep those muscles free from tension. We want to think bobblehead, and we want to follow the principle that muscles in motion can't grip. So if you watch me on your screen, I want everybody to do this with me. I want you to allow your head to bobble on your spine freely this way. Everybody do that. And it should bobble freely this way, forward and back. So try that. And it should bobble freely this way, side to side. So when you bring the holes in the ears back over the shoulders, if it feels tense to you, or even if it doesn't feel tense to you, when you're in performance, you want to keep that bobblehead motion going all the time, because it will cause it will prevent the muscles around the vocal tract from gripping. Okay, and when I say subtle continuous motion, I'm talking about so subtle that you won't look strange on the contest stage. So very subtle bobblehead motion is what we're going for. Okay, to summarize, here are the strategies to take pressure off the vocal tract. Number one, respect the weight of your heavy, heavy head. Number two, align the holes in the ears with the highest part of the shoulder to minimize the amount of muscle work required to keep your head balanced on your spine, and use subtle continuous motion to keep muscles from gripping. Okay, if we have time at the end, I can take questions. So if you think of a question and you want to throw it into the chat, be my guest. Okay, so we talked about reducing pressure on the vocal tract. Now let's talk about the vocal folds. Condition and manage the vocal folds to achieve efficient closure for the optimal barbershop sound. Let's see what that's talking about here. We're going to start by watching a video of the vocal folds of 4 singers as viewed through an endoscope. Okay, the name of the video that you're going to watch is called Chords, Hear Us and Have Mercy, because Hear Us and Have Mercy is the name of the song that the singers are singing in Latin. And this is what you're going to see about 1 minute into the video. You're going to see 4 vocal folds, 4 sets of vocal folds side by side, and this is what they'll look like. They look a little bit vagina-like, so just be prepared for that. And things I want you to keep in mind as you're watching these vocal folds in action: the vocal folds are very, very tiny. They're smaller than most people realize. Women's vocal folds, adult women's vocal folds on average are about 12 to 17 millimeters in length, or about the size of a dime or a nickel. And then men's vocal folds on average are 17 to 25 millimeters in length, or roughly the size of a nickel to a quarter. Okay. And if you want to know if you want to know how big your specific vocal folds are, take a look at your pinky fingernail. Your vocal folds are approximately the same length as your pinky fingernail. probably that's smaller than you thought they were, right? I know that I used to think my vocal folds were probably somewhere around the size of my neck, but they're not. They're teeny weeny little tissues. Okay, and I want you to, as you're watching these vocal folds sing, I want you to consider that when we are simply breathing normally, our vocal folds are open. So here's a picture of 4 vocal folds, 4 sets of vocal folds that are open because they're all breathing. And for speech and singing, the vocal folds close and vibrate together. Air molecules that pass between them are set into vibration frequencies that register in the listener's ears as sound. Okay, so let's see. That's the link. I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. And Cherie, do we have the link in the chat?
I'll put the link in the chat right now.
Okay, so Cherie is going to put the link in the chat for you to click on and watch the video in your own separate screen. If this does not work for you, or if it is too confusing for you, you can just spend 3 minutes and 15 seconds taking a little break while everybody else watches it, and then we'll go on. Everything here is a grand experiment. Okay, so I'll see you in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. There's the link. You'll definitely want to, because they're going to start singing about 1 minute into the video. Video or watched most of it. I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, so I hope that was enlightening for you. When the vocal folds close and vibrate together for speech and singing, as you were just watching them do, that process is called phonation. And phonation is a word you probably noticed before in the on the score sheets, and maybe some of you have wondered, what the hell does, well, excuse me, what the heck does phonation mean? Well, now you know what it means. It's the process of the vocal folds coming together and vibrating for speech and singing. And for the purposes of barbershop, it's useful to think of phonation as existing on a spectrum from breathy to clear. Breathy phonation is the sound of Marilyn Monroe singing happy birthday to JFK. Would you all please now demonstrate, muted, the sound of Marilyn singing happy birthday to JFK? So just sing along with me. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you. Fantastic. Now, I didn't have to coach you on how to sing with breathy phonation, right? You instinctively knew what to do when I just said Marilyn Monroe. And what was happening was you were bringing your vocal folds together loosely, so that a lot of air was allowed to escape between the folds as they were vibrating together. Okay, that's the sound of breathy phonation. Now, let's make a very different kind of sound. This is what I call the stop the toddler from wandering into oncoming traffic voice. So without hurting yourself, I'm going to count to 3, and I'm going to say stop loudly to stop that toddler from walking into traffic, and I want you to say it with me. Don't hurt yourself, but remember that the toddler's life is on the line, okay? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, stop. Good job. Okay, so that sound that we all just made, hopefully, without hurting ourselves, was probably loud and very penetrating and very vibrant and alive. These are all qualities that we reward in great barbershop. However, if we were really thinking about saving that toddler's life, we probably had some adrenaline going, and the sound was probably tense. There was probably a lot of tension in that stop the toddler voice. Okay, so for great barbershop, we want We want all that penetrating, vibrant presence, but we want to be able to sing like that all night long. Okay? So here's where barbershop lives on the spectrum of phonation. It's all the way to the clear side, but free from tension at the same time. Now, this is a famous men's quartet. Many of you know the Gas House Gang. They were famously asked, "How do you sing such beautiful softs?" And they famously replied, "We don't sing softs. We only sing levels of loud." Okay, now I interpret this to mean that even when the Gas House Gang got very quiet, they never got breathy. They always kept their phonation very clear with efficient vocal fold closure, because that's what gets rewarded in barbershop. That's what makes the voices lock and ring together. Never breathy, always clear, except in those rare moments where we want a Marilyn Monroe sexy effect, right? So what are the strategies to get efficient vocal fold closure? First of all, we can experiment with primal sounds to find our most efficient closure. So everybody repeat after me. Oh, wow. Oh, no. Oh, man. Good. So when you made those sounds, you probably you were using a clear voice without a lot of tension, right? Same clarity that we had when we yelled "Stop the toddler," but now we're doing it with less tension. So experimenting with primal sounds can help us find clarity without push, which is what we're after. Strive for clear tone, never breathy, at all volume levels. Okay, so take 10 seconds to sing an ooh vowel at the quietest level you can sing without getting breathy. Okay, everybody try that. If it gets breathy, you've gotten quieter than you probably ever want to sing in barbershop, unless your director really, really wants you to get so quiet that it's breathy. Now try that again on an ah vowel, as quietly as you can sing an ah vowel without getting breathy. Good job. It is worth experimenting to figure out where your point of transition is from breathy to clear when you're working at low dynamic levels. Okay, here's one that may be new to a lot of you. When breathing to sing, take a comfortable breath, never an overcrowded one. Tanking up creates excessive pressure under the vocal folds. Okay, so anytime we take a giant breath, as I used to do every time I took a breath when I first joined Sweet Adelines, and I thought that more was always better. What happens when we take a giant breath is we create a lot of pressure underneath the vocal folds. And as you will recall, the vocal folds are only as big as your pinky fingernail. They are tiny, delicate little tissues. And we don't want them to have to struggle to stay closed, right? If they're struggling to stay closed, guess what's going to happen? Air is going to leak. And the tone is going to be unstable, especially at the onset. So taking
Pardon me, Miss Davies.
Yes,
Pardon
Jen.
me, this is your 5-minute warning.
Oh, thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
Isn't it 20 till right now?
Yeah, the schedule says till 10:45.
Oh, okay. I shall whip it along then. Okay, good. Thank you. And then my absolute favorite, improve closure with semi-occluded vocal tract, or SOVT exercises, lip trills, tongue trills, V sounds, Z sounds, and straw phonation. So here's the technical explanation for SOVT exercises and why they work. Semi-occluded vocal tract exercises assist with the vocal fold closure needed for clear tone. These exercises partially block or occlude the escaping air, raising the air pressure inside the vocal tract. This increases the back pressure on top of the vocal folds. The increased back pressure gently stretches and massages the vocal folds, helping them close with less effort. Here's all you need to remember. Lip trills and other SOVT exercises massage your vocal folds to help them come together cleanly for clearer tone with less effort. Okay, and finally, habitually prepare for the first breath by intentionally building your best instrument. So, circling back to the story I told at the beginning, we went down into the basement to sing for the C chordsman, and Ted said to me, I could tell by the way you took that starting breath that the sound wasn't going to be as good as it was upstairs. That was the moment when I began to build the habit of preparing my instrument prior to the initial breath. This was a turning point in my life as a singer. So singers have a wide variety of instruments to choose from every time we sing, right? The singer on the left is what I call the $200 student violin. And the singer on the right is what I call the $2 million Stradivarius. And notice that it's the same singer. She's just choosing to build a different instrument, right? And we always have that choice every time we sing. Similarly, when we sing with breathy tone or we sing with tone that is clear but tense and pushy, we're using the $200 student violin. When we sing with perfect clarity without tension, that's the $2 million Stradivarius. So to build our best instrument, we want to always use the yes and strategy. We want to know what habit we're building, and we want to prioritize that habit against all distractions, including directors, coaches, and audiences. If we're building a habit and the director asks us to think about character or think about articulation, but our habit is alignment, we're always going to prioritize alignment first. That's how you build a habit. So once I started working on building my best instrument with every breath, things really started to take off for me as a singer. And this is how that story ended. 2 weeks after I had the most annoying coaching session with Ted, we went on to win our very first medals ever. So that's the happy ending to that story. And here's the recap of the 3 most important things I ever learned about vocal production. Reduce pressure on the vocal tract by aligning the holes in the ears with the highest part of the shoulders. Condition and manage the vocal folds, and habitually prepare for the first breath by intentionally building your first instrument. And miraculously, we're done in time. Hooray.
That was awesome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Cherie. Thank you, everybody.
So if no one has had a chance, if anyone hasn't had a chance to, in a quartet, to be coached by Elizabeth, I highly recommend her. And I failed to announce when I introduced you that you were the director of the Seattle Chordsmen with Barbershop Harmony Society. So check them out on YouTube. We have a short break in between before we have the amazing Katie Hawley start her class. If you want to do the hokey pokey